Little girl showed up at a construction site and asked, "Can I work here?" What the Millionaire CEO did was unbelievable. It's 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Construction workers are just starting their day at a massive building site in downtown Chicago. Hard hats, heavy machinery, the smell of concrete and steel everywhere. And then, a tiny figure appears at the chain-link fence. A 6-year-old girl, wearing a backpack too big for her small shoulders, clutching a brown paper bag that looks like it holds her lunch. She walks right up to the security guard and says something that stops everyone in their tracks. "Excuse me, sir. Can I work here?" Most people would have laughed, called her parents, sent her on her way. But when the CEO of this billion-dollar company heard what happened next, this powerful, tough businessman fell to his knees and cried like a baby. This isn't some made-up fairy tale, folks. This is the true story of little Lila Martinez, her sick mother Maria, and a billionaire named Donovan West who thought he had seen everything, until one small question changed his entire life forever. Before we dive in, I want you to think about this. Have you ever been so desperate that you'd break every rule just to help someone you love? Drop your answer in the comments because I promise you, after hearing Lila's story, you'll never look at determination the same way again. But before we go further into their story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from around the world. We truly appreciate your support and love hearing from our amazing viewers. Let me take you back to where this all began. 6 months earlier, in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. Lila Martinez was not your typical 6-year-old. While other kids her age were watching cartoons and playing with toys, Lila was learning how to take care of her mama. Maria Martinez was only 28 years old, but she looked much older. Working 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and serving tables during the day, had worn her down. But it wasn't the work that was destroying her. It was the sickness that had been growing inside her for months. Every morning, Lila would wake up before sunrise. Not because she wanted to, but because she could hear her mama coughing in the next room. That terrible, painful cough that seemed to get worse every single day. "Mama, are you okay?" Little Lila would whisper, climbing into bed next to Maria. "I'm fine, Mija," Maria would always say, even though her voice was getting weaker. "Mama's just tired." But Lila wasn't stupid. She could see the truth in her mama's eyes. The way Maria would hold her chest when she thought Lila wasn't looking. The way she had to sit down after walking just a few steps. The way she barely ate anything anymore. One Tuesday morning, everything changed. Lila woke up and found her mama still in bed at 10 a.m. Maria's face was pale as paper, and she was breathing in short, quick breaths like she'd been running a marathon. "Mama." Lila shook her gently. "Mama, wake up." Maria opened her eyes, but they looked different. Scared. "Lila, baby. I need you to call Mrs. Rodriguez next door, okay? Tell her Mama needs help." Mrs. Rodriguez took one look at Maria and called for an ambulance. Lila had never been in an ambulance before. The loud sirens, the flashing lights, the way the paramedic kept checking her mama's pulse over and over again. At the hospital, Lila sat in a hard plastic chair, swinging her legs back and forth, waiting. And waiting. And waiting. Finally, a doctor came out. He was a nice man with kind eyes, but when he started talking to Mrs. Rodriguez, Lila could tell something was very, very wrong. She crept closer, hiding behind a vending machine, and listened. "Your friend is very sick," the doctor was saying quietly. "The infection in her lungs has spread. We need to do surgery right away, or—" He paused, looking around to make sure no little ears were listening. Without the operation, she might not make it through the month. Lila's heart started beating so fast she thought it might jump out of her chest. "How much will the surgery cost?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked. $47,000. "We need at least half of that up front before we can schedule her." Mrs. Rodriguez put her hand over her mouth. "Dios mío, we don't have that kind of money. Maria works, but she doesn't have insurance that covers this." "I'm sorry," the doctor said. "There are some programs that might help, but the waiting list is months long. And Maria, she doesn't have months." That night, back in their tiny apartment, Lila listened to her mama crying in the next room. Maria thought she was being quiet, but the walls were thin, and Lila could hear everything. For the first time in her 6 years of life, Lila understood something that no child should ever have to understand. Her mama might go away forever. And there was nothing anyone could do about it because they didn't have enough money. But Lila was her mama's daughter. And Maria Martinez hadn't raised a quitter. The next morning, while Maria was still sleeping, Lila made a decision that would change everything. She put on her best dress, a blue one with white flowers that her mama had bought her for Easter. She packed her school lunch in a brown paper bag. She took every coin she could find in the apartment, exactly $3.47, and put it in her little purse. Then she walked 2.5 hours across the city to the biggest construction site she'd ever seen. If you've ever felt like the whole world was against you, if you've ever been so scared that you'd do anything, to save someone you love, hit that like button right now and don't forget to subscribe. Because Lila's journey was just beginning. Now let me tell you about Donovan West. At 42 years old, Donovan was what you'd call a success story. He owned West Construction and Development, one of the biggest real estate companies in the Midwest. Forbes magazine had him on their cover twice. He drove a car that cost more than most people's houses. When he walked into a room, everyone stopped talking and listened. But success had come with a price. Donovan was tough. Some people called him ruthless. He fired employees for being 5 minutes late. He demolished old buildings without thinking twice about the families who used to live there. He made decisions based on numbers, not feelings. Business is business, he always said. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. This particular Tuesday morning, Donovan was not in a good mood. He'd gotten word that there were safety problems at the Roosevelt Avenue construction site, his biggest project of the year. A 40-story luxury apartment building that was supposed to make him another $50 million. He climbed into his black BMW, worth more than most people make in 2 years, and drove to the site with his jaw clenched tight. Heads were going to roll. Someone was going to get fired today, and maybe several someones. When he pulled up to the construction site, workers scattered like ants. Everyone knew that when Mr. West showed up unannounced, it meant trouble. Donovan stepped out of his car wearing a perfect gray suit that probably cost more than Maria Martinez made in 6 months. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete as he marched toward the main building, ready to tear someone a new one. He was halfway across the lot, yelling at his foreman about the safety violations, when something tugged on his jacket. Donovan spun around, ready to snap at whoever had the nerve to interrupt him. And then he looked down. Standing there, barely reaching his waist, was the smallest person he'd ever seen on a construction site. A little girl with big brown eyes and pigtails tied with pink ribbons. She was wearing a blue dress with white flowers and carrying a backpack that looked like it weighed more than she did. For a moment, Donovan was too shocked to speak. Construction sites were dangerous places. Hard hats were required. Steel beams swung overhead. Heavy machinery moved dirt and concrete all day long. This was absolutely no place for a child. "What are you doing here?" he finally managed to say. "Where are your parents?" The little girl looked up at him with the most serious expression he'd ever seen on a 6-year-old face. "Sir," she said in a voice so polite and determined that it made his chest tight. "Can I work here?" Donovan blinked. "What? Can I work here?" she repeated. "I'm very good at cleaning. I clean my mama's house every day. And I can carry things. See." She held up her backpack. "I carried this all the way here by myself." "Sweetheart," Donovan said, trying to keep his voice gentle, "little kids don't work at construction sites. It's not safe. And besides, shouldn't you be in school right now?" That's when Lila's bottom lip started to tremble. But she didn't cry. Instead, she took a deep breath and said the words that would haunt Donovan West for the rest of his life. "My mama is really, really sick. The doctor says she needs a big operation or she's going to go away forever. But we don't have enough money. So I need to get a job and help her. The construction site went completely quiet. Even the heavy machinery seemed to stop humming. Every worker within earshot had stopped what they were doing to listen to this tiny girl explaining why she needed to work. Donovan felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. His throat got tight. His eyes started to burn. His hands began to shake. How much money do you need? He heard himself asking. $47,000, Lila said matter-of-factly, like she was ordering a hamburger. But Mrs. Rodriguez says maybe if we get half, the doctors will help us with the rest. That's when it happened. Donovan West, the man who had fired 100 employees without blinking, who had torn down orphanages to build shopping malls, who had never shown weakness in front of anyone, fell to his knees right there in the dirt. And for the first time since he was 12 years old, he cried. What would you do if a child begged you for a job to save their parent's life? Tell me in the comments, because this story is about to take a turn that nobody saw coming. Donovan couldn't stop the tears. 20 years of keeping his emotions locked away, and this little girl had broken him wide open in 30 seconds. Sir, Lila said softly. Are you okay? Did I say something wrong? Donovan wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, not caring that his expensive suit was getting dirty from kneeling in the construction dirt. No, sweetheart, he managed to say. You didn't do anything wrong. Come here. He sat down on a pile of wooden boards and patted his knee. Lila climbed up next to him, her little legs dangling. What's your name? He asked. Lila Martinez. What's yours? I'm Donovan. Donovan West. And I want you to tell me everything about your mama, okay? So Lila did. She told him about Maria working 2 jobs. About how her mama would come home so tired she could barely keep her eyes open, but she'd still help Lila with her homework. About how Maria would sing Spanish lullabies when Lila had bad dreams, even though singing made her cough. She told him about the morning when her mama couldn't get out of bed, and the scary ride in the ambulance, and how the doctor said they needed so much money that it might as well have been $1 million. And as Lila talked, something strange was happening to Donovan. Memories he'd buried for decades started flooding back. He was 8 years old again, living in a tiny apartment not so different from Lila's. His mama, Sarah West, working 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Coming home with her hands raw from cleaning offices all night, but still finding the energy to help him with his math homework. He remembered the day his mama got sick. Really sick. The way she tried to hide it from him, just like Maria was trying to hide it from Lila. The bills that kept coming in the mail, with numbers so big they made his mama cry. He remembered being 9 years old and going door to door in their neighborhood, asking if anyone had work for a little boy. Mowing lawns with a rusty mower. Shoveling snow in the winter until his hands went numb. Collecting bottles and cans to trade for nickels and dimes. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. His mama passed away when he was 12. Not because the doctors couldn't help her, but because they couldn't afford the help she needed. Donovan had sworn that day that he would never be poor again. Never be helpless again. He would make so much money that no one could ever take away the people he loved. But somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten what love actually felt like. Until now. Looking down at this brave little girl who reminded him so much of himself at that age. Lila, he said quietly, what if I told you that you don't need to work? What if I told you that I'm going to help your mama get better? Lila's eyes went wide. Really? You would do that? Really? But first, I need to meet your mama. Can you take me to her? 20 minutes later, Donovan's BMW was parked outside the smallest apartment building he'd seen in years. As they climbed the narrow stairs to the 3rd floor, he noticed the peeling paint on the walls, the broken light fixtures, the carpet that had seen better decades. It reminded him of every place he'd lived as a child. Maria was in bed when they walked in, propped up against pillows, looking pale and fragile. When she saw Donovan in his expensive suit standing next to her daughter, panic flashed across her face. Lila, Mija, what did you do? Where have you been? Mama, this is Mr. Donovan. He's going to help you get better. Maria looked at Donovan with suspicion. Sir, I don't know what my daughter told you, but we're not looking for charity. We're fine. Ma'am, Donovan said gently, sitting down in the chair next to her bed. With all due respect, you're not fine. And your daughter shouldn't have to carry this burden alone. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. I'm calling the best doctor in Chicago. Dr. Peterson at Northwestern Memorial. He's going to take care of you, and you're not going to worry about the cost. I can't accept that, Maria whispered, tears starting to fall. I don't even know you. Donovan took her hand, something he hadn't done for another human being in years. You remind me of someone I lost a long time ago. Someone who deserved better than what life gave her. Let me do this. Please. 3 days later, Maria Martinez was in the best hospital room she'd ever seen in her life. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. Fresh flowers on every table. And Dr. Peterson, the same doctor who usually only treated millionaires and celebrities, was personally overseeing her care. Mrs. Martinez, Dr. Peterson said with a warm smile, the surgery was a complete success. We removed all the infected tissue, and your lungs are already starting to heal. You're going to be just fine. Maria couldn't stop crying. Happy tears this time. For weeks, she'd been preparing herself to say goodbye to Lila. Now she was going to watch her daughter grow up after all. But Donovan wasn't done. Maria, he said, walking into the hospital room with Lila skipping beside him. I have a proposition for you. Over the past 3 days, Donovan had learned everything about the Martinez family. How Maria had immigrated from Mexico when she was 16, working her way through community college while cleaning offices at night. How she'd been saving every penny for Lila's education, even when they could barely afford groceries. I want to offer you a job, Donovan continued. As the community outreach coordinator for West Construction. You'd help us identify families in need, coordinate our charity programs, make sure we're giving back to the neighborhoods where we build. Maria stared at him. But I don't have experience in. You have the most important experience of all, Donovan interrupted. You understand what it means to struggle. What it means to need help but be too proud to ask for it. That's exactly what we need. The salary he offered was more than Maria had ever dreamed of making. Health insurance for both her and Lila. A college fund that would ensure Lila could go to any university she wanted. Why? Maria whispered. Why are you doing all this for us? Donovan looked down at Lila, who was coloring in a book she'd brought from home. Because 25 years ago, I was exactly where Lila is now. And no one helped my family. I swore that if I ever had the power to change someone's story, I would. But there has to be something you want in return, Maria said. She'd learned that nothing in life was truly free. There is, Donovan admitted. I want to remember what it feels like to be human again. This little girl reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Money isn't everything. Family is. 5 years passed. Lila Martinez was now 11 years old, and she was nothing like other kids her age. While her classmates were playing video games and watching TikTok, Lila was spending her afternoons at West construction sites, wearing a tiny hard hat that Donovan had custom-made for her. Mr. Donovan, she'd say, pointing at the blueprints spread across the construction trailer table, why did you put the electrical outlet there instead of here? Wouldn't it be easier for families to reach? Donovan would always stop whatever he was doing to answer her questions. This kid saw things that his team of experienced architects missed. She thought about how real people would live in the buildings they were creating. Maria had flourished in her new role. The community outreach program she'd built had helped over 200 families get back on their feet. Medical bills paid. Job training provided. Kids sent to college who never thought they'd have the chance. But it was Lila who surprised everyone the most. At 11, she was already reading high school-level math textbooks. She'd built working models of bridges out of popsicle sticks that could hold more weight than anyone thought possible. She could look at a construction problem and see solutions that grown men with decades of experience couldn't figure out. "She's special," Donovan told Maria one evening as they watched Lila explain to a group of college engineering students how to reinforce a foundation. "I've never seen anything like it." "She gets it from her father," Maria said quietly. It was the first time she'd ever mentioned Lila's father to Donovan. He was an engineer back in Mexico. Died in a car accident when Lila was 2. She has his mind for building things. That night, Donovan made another life-changing decision. "Maria, I want to send Lila to MIT." "She's 11 years old." Maria laughed. "Not now. But I want to make sure she's ready. The best tutors, the best preparatory schools, whatever it takes. This girl is going to change the world someday. I can feel it." Lila Martinez graduated high school at 15. Not because she was pushed, but because she was bored with regular classes and hungry to learn more. MIT accepted her immediately. At 17, she had her bachelor's degree in civil engineering with a specialization in sustainable construction. Her senior thesis on earthquake-resistant, affordable housing won national awards and caught the attention of engineering firms across the country. Every company wanted to hire her. Google offered her a starting salary of $200,000. Apple wanted her to design their new headquarters. Tesla was interested in her ideas for sustainable manufacturing facilities. But Lila had already made up her mind. "Mr. Donovan," she said, walking into his office wearing a brand new business suit, "I'd like to apply for a job." Donovan looked up from his desk and started laughing. "Lila, you know you don't need to apply. You've been part of this company since you were 6 years old." "I want to do this the right way," she said seriously. "I want to earn my place here." So they did a formal interview. Donovan asked her about her vision for the future of construction. About sustainable building practices. About how to make quality housing affordable for working families. Her answers blew him away. "I want to design buildings that change lives," Lila said. "Not just pretty buildings for rich people, but homes that working families can actually afford. Schools that inspire kids to dream bigger. Community centers that bring neighborhoods together." "And how would you do that?" Donovan asked. "By remembering where I came from," she replied. "Every building I design, I'm going to ask myself, would this help a family like mine? Would this give some other little girl hope for her future?" Donovan offered her the position of junior project manager on the spot. But Lila had one more surprise. "There's something else," she said. "I want to start a foundation. The Sarah West Foundation." Donovan's breath caught in his throat. Sarah was his mother's name. He'd never told Lila that. "Mama told me about your mother," Lila said gently. "How she died because she couldn't afford the help she needed. Just like almost happened to my mama. The foundation would help families facing medical emergencies. We'd pay for surgeries, treatments, whatever they need. So no other little kid has to walk up to a construction site begging for work to save their parents' life." 10 years later, Lila Martinez West, she'd legally added Donovan's last name when he officially adopted her as his daughter at age 19, stood in front of the biggest construction project of her career. The Martinez Community Center. Named after her mother, who had passed away peacefully 2 years earlier after a full and happy life. The building was everything Lila had dreamed of. Affordable housing on the upper floors for working families. A free medical clinic on the ground floor. After-school programs for kids whose parents worked multiple jobs. Job training centers for adults who needed new skills. And it was all powered by solar panels, used recycled materials wherever possible, and cost 30% less than traditional construction thanks to Lila's innovative building techniques. "You know," Donovan said, walking up beside her as they watched the final beam being installed, "when I met you that day, I thought I was saving your family." "Weren't you?" Lila asked. "No." Donovan shook his head, putting his arm around the daughter of his heart. You saved me. You reminded me why I started building things in the first place. Not to make money, but to give people hope. The Sarah West Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. They'd helped over 10,000 families pay for medical emergencies. Lila's affordable housing designs were being used in cities across the country. West Construction had become known not just for luxury buildings, but for construction that changed communities. So what's next? Donovan asked. Lila smiled and pointed to the empty lot across the street. A school. But not just any school. A place where kids can learn engineering and construction trades alongside traditional subjects. Where some other little girl who loves to build things can see that her dreams aren't too big. And what are we going to call it? The Maria Martinez School for Future Builders, Lila said without hesitation. Because Mama always said that the best way to honor the people who help you is to help someone else. Today, if you drive through the south side of Chicago, you'll see something remarkable. The Martinez Community Center serves over 2,000 families every year. The Maria Martinez School has graduated 500 young people who went on to careers in engineering, construction, and architecture. The Sarah West Foundation has saved thousands of lives. And it all started with one little girl who was brave enough to ask, "Can I work here?" Lila Martinez West is now 32 years old. She's one of the most respected engineers in the country. She's designed earthquake-resistant schools in California, hurricane-proof homes in Florida, and sustainable housing projects in cities around the world. But ask her what she's most proud of, and she'll tell you about the scholarship program that sends 10 kids from working families to engineering school every year. Free tuition, free housing, free everything. The only requirement is that they promise to use their education to help others. Because Lila learned something that day when she was 6 years old, the scariest situations can lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to ask for help. And sometimes, helping someone else is exactly what you need to find yourself. Donovan West is 58 now. He still runs West Construction, but these days it's as much about community building as it is about making money. He keeps a picture on his desk of a 6-year-old girl in a blue dress with white flowers, standing next to a construction fence. It reminds him every day that the most important question anyone can ask isn't, "How much money can I make?" but, "How can I help?" If this story touched your heart, do me a favor. Think about someone in your life who might need help but is too proud to ask for it. Reach out to them. You might just change both of your lives forever. And remember, you don't have to be a millionaire to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is seeing someone else's need and deciding to care. What act of kindness will you do today? Drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that remind us what really matters in life. The little girl who asked, "Can I work here?" grew up to build a better world. What will you build with your life? If you made it this far, you're part of something special. You're someone who believes that love can change everything, that it's never too late to start over, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. This story reminds us that real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the relationships we build, the lives we touch, and the love we give and receive. Like this video if you believe in second chances. Subscribe if you want more stories that remind us what really matters in life. And drop a comment telling me about a time when someone small made a big difference in your world. Love shows up in the most unexpected places. Sometimes all we have to do is be brave enough to say yes when it asks for our help. Donovan was making phone calls and arranging for Maria to be transferred to the best hospital in the city. Something else was happening that he didn't know about. If you've ever been torn between doing what's right and doing what's expected of you, leave a heart in the comments.